Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Goodbye Honey. And this is a tight little high-concept thriller from director Max Strand, who previously had done additional crew work on films like Limitless. And this film is starring basically a whole bunch of women with three names. I'm just making an observation based off of the IMDb, so it's starring Pamela Jane Morgan, who plays Dawn, who's a woman, where you find out throughout the film that, like, she's a trucker now. She's trying to keep her deceased husband's trucking business alive. This is never really what she wanted to do, but she's doing it to keep his spirit alive. And she runs into this young woman played by Juliet Alice Gobin, who deals with escaping from the capture, this confinement from this man. And as you go through the film, you find out why, but they build this tension and trying to figure out, is Dawn going to trust this young woman, and figuring out her story. And this film is very much in the vein of, say, Run and Alone, that came out last year in 2020, in terms of just very tight, straightforward, high concept kind of thriller. And this film really, besides some cutscenes back to flashbacks that really set up our young woman's story and what she's dealt with, it's really just focusing on this truck on the side of the road late at night, and Dawn, this woman, being introduced in that way and confronting things on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. And the film starts off with this really intense, just dropping you into the action of our young woman trying to escape this basement. And Strandy is a really impressive long take to build the tension. There's a very seismic bass kind of score that goes underneath it, building up the tension. And that opening scene really sets the tone for a film that is really going to deliver those thrills and really intrigue you in the ways that it's not the most complex story, which it kind of combines Alone and maybe Don't Breathe a little bit, or something of that sort, or say Room with Brie Larson, in terms of, like, what were the motivations of this young woman being captive, and what did this middle-aged man have in mind for her. And you have these layers, these flashbacks that really give us that story, and I'll get there in a second in terms of, like, what that does to the pacing of the film. But we have at this point a really intense, well-made film, and the film takes its time once it cuts to Dawn in her cab, taking care of things at night, getting herself ready. She's trying to eat her salad and the fork breaks, and was like, we've all been there. Dawn's super relatable. And those are the little things about the film that it takes its time to let us get to know our characters a bit, which is invaluable, because then we care. And I cared for Dawn. And this young woman, obviously, she has a lot of things that she's been going through, but Dawn, there's a lot to what she's been struggling with. And even towards the end of the film, our antagonist, this man who's kept this young woman captive, has some dark, twisted morality about what he's doing, and that makes him more intriguing and interesting, and not just some, like, evil monster. And the film tries to challenge you. Might not get you that deeply, but it does try to challenge you in ways in terms of understanding him. And the film, through Strand and his cinematographer, has really strong camera work. So there's definitely some technical expertise that goes into this particular film. And I would love to see what Strand can do with other films, maybe with even a bigger budget and some bigger ideas. But in terms of this film, you have that really effective camera work, the score, which at times goes between the bass and this like 80s synth kind of score, and even a little bit of the Thing score, like the doom 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 doom, and balancing that score that really helps things work out. And the film feels very realistic. You feel like you're in the moment. They feel like real people dealing with a potentially horrific issue that could possibly happen and has unfortunately happened plenty of times. There's definitely a strong sense of tension as the film goes on over the course of this story, and yeah, for the most part, it's very economical. There's one particular sequence that, in the end, doesn't really do much in terms of forwarding the plot, but it builds up some great tension and some of the best tension in the film. So it really accomplishes its job in that way, even if it's not narratively important and significant. And as you get through this film, there's definitely parts in the middle like that sequence, and it starts doing like the flashbacks and stuff like that to give us some backstory on this young woman and this man who's been holding her captive. And there's some deep emotional and heavy moments there, but it does kind of cut the intensity and the action of the in that time period moment that we're experiencing in this film, because it's an hour and 35-minute film. It's a taut little thriller. We want to be in it and kept in it. But this film gets a little bit clunky towards the center in terms of doing that in particular. There's a particular sequence in one of the flashbacks of showing the passage of time with this very aggressive and in-your-face kind of editing style, and it worked for me. There's those little things throughout this film that I feel like kind of elevate it in terms of what it's able to do. But, you know, in the end, it has a pretty straightforward plot. Once things are set up, you have an idea of what's going to happen. There's some little bit of interesting twists. They're solid. They're not like mind-blowing. This isn't like Usual Suspects or, you know, a Shyamalan film where it's like a big turning point, but there's definitely some of those moments that work in a solid way and deliver what it needs to. And there's a surprising amount of depth, like I mentioned before, to these characters. They all have very specific motivations and potentially relatable ones. The only thing is, as you get to the very end of the film and the climax of the film, it feels a little bit drawn out, to be honest, especially compared to the pace of the rest of the film. And there is some horrible CGI fire at one point that just really took me out of the movie. So there's some very visible flaws in the finale, but in general, I think it's a really effective thriller from start to finish. And especially if you're a fan of that thriller genre, I think Goodbye Honey is definitely for you. And honestly, this is the kind of one that's so well put together, might be able to grab the attention of some of those that might not be genre enthusiasts. But those are my thoughts on Goodbye Honey. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.